It's time for Your Valuable Home. Welcome to Your Valuable Home, the weekly podcast for listeners who believe that residential real estate is the way to build wealth.
This is Kevin.
And this is Ron. Going back to
HOAs.
California, we were in California when we did the coolest neighborhoods in America.
Correct.
And we were helped by a guy by the name of Eric Chiel.
Phenomenal guy.
Eric's back with us again, and we're going to be talking about something it's a story of cooperation, camaraderie, community pride. Boy, where do you see that stuff happening today, right? It's happening in Palm Springs, California. Eric's back with 3 colleagues who are as proud and passionate as he about their gem of a town, the California desert. All are deeply involved and benefit from 1PS. Remember that name, 1PS, a quite unique partnership between an ever-growing number of neighborhood associations, Palm Springs government, and in many cases, local service organization. They're making their city one of the best, most inclusive towns in America to visit or call home. Really cool stuff, and we need more of it in this country. In addition to creating his own neighborhood organization in historic Twin Palms in Palm Springs, Eric was a board member and communications officer of 1PS, the Organized Neighborhoods of Palm Springs. Eric, it's great to work with you again. Please introduce us to some of your colleagues, well, all your colleagues that are on the line.
Thank you for the generous introduction, Ron, and thank you for having me back. One really quick statement, if I may, before I introduce the others, and that is just to set the tone. Everything that 1PS and that the neighborhood do, we do independently. We are not staffed nor funded by city government. All of our work is truly incremental to the city budget for the benefit of the city. With that perspective, I am so pleased to introduce first Denise Goolsby. Denise was a reporter and a columnist for the Palm Springs Daily newspaper, but she left that role in 2016 to become the City of Palm Springs Office of Neighborhoods Manager. And in that capacity, she now works with representatives from 52 organized neighborhoods and with other city staff to marshal resources required to problem solve neighborhood issues and to address resident concerns. We also have with us Kathy Cohn. Kathy has been the chair or the vice chair of 1PS for 7 years, leading that organization through several planning retreats, the development of a strategic plan, hosting the Neighborhoods USA National Conference, and routinely providing input to City Council on issues of interest to neighborhoods. She lives in the Sunrise Park neighborhood, for which she's been that organization's vice chair and its representative to 1PS since its inception in 2014. And then rounding out our team is Megan Rodriguez. Megan is the vice president of her own neighborhood organization, the Desert Highland Gateway Estates Community Action Association, and she's a member of the 1PS Communications Committee. She's also an Air Force veteran and a serial entrepreneur.
Okay, let's just jump right into this. Denise, as the city's Office of Neighborhoods Manager, would you tell us how and when Palm Springs neighborhoods first began to become organized?
Sure. Actually, it was Megan's neighborhood that was first organized back in 1967 when Gateway Estates became the first city's organized neighborhood. That development was a new development in North Palm Springs, and they were established as a way to kind of bring people together and welcome new neighbors to the neighborhood and help create activities for the youth of the community. Moving forward through the decades, neighborhoods then began forming to give themselves a greater voice at City Hall. Coming up into those decades, at the time, the main issue was basically frustration with the city's growth impinging on neighborhoods across the city, and residents didn't like that the city wasn't listening to their concerns. So what the group did was they successfully lobbied and pushed for an office at City Hall that would be dedicated to neighborhoods and serve as an official liaison to the coalition. A city staff member was assigned liaison duties as an Office of Neighborhood Involvement and Public Participation was created in 2001. So at that time, 2001, we had an office that would work with this coalition of neighborhoods at the time, the predecessor to 1PS, which was formed by Deepwell Estates, Historic Tennis Club, Las Palmas, the Movie Colony, and Racket Club. So that was the beginning.
So the city actually needed a way to officially recognize these groups and serve as an umbrella organization over the groups, correct?
Correct. In 2004, David Reddy, the city manager at the time, worked with the city attorney to create an ordinance to officially create the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, which has developed throughout the years, and allow for the creation of the independent Palm Springs Neighborhood Involvement Committee, which would become 1PS in later years. And the ordinance was passed by the city council in 2005.
Well, that sort of brings us to today. Can you relate 1PS to what's happening today? And how do elected officials and city staff interact with 1PS and the neighborhood organizations?
What's really great about the organization and the communication is that city staff and elected officials have direct and consistent contact with 1PS and the neighborhood organizations. The establishment of the relationship has provided for a timely dissemination of information, exchange of ideas on topics of interest to the community. What's cool is the elected officials, city manager, and top-level staff attend monthly 1PS meetings, as well as neighborhood annual meetings, where residents have the opportunity to ask questions and receive updates directly from the decision makers. And it also opens up the communication for email, phone calls. And so the residents have really quite direct access with city staff and city officials.
That's super. And you're at sort of the vortex of all those interactions, aren't you? What's your role as Officer of Neighborhoods Manager?
I like the word vortex. That's great. I see my role first and foremost as a conduit between the residents and City Hall, not just a problem solver, but really trying to bring people and resources together to answer questions and address many, many issues. What I want to do is make life easier as possible for residents, staff, and in turn council members. Even just little small things like people will call up and say, hey, where's my permit in the building department? And, I could just walk across the hall or give a ring and find out for them and call them back. It's just the little things that really make a difference. I'm also part of the communications department now, so I run some of our social media accounts, including Nextdoor, Twitter, and Instagram. But for me, it's all about communicating with the public, letting them know about upcoming events, street closures, anything that might be helpful for residents to know.
Your background, too. I mean, how long have you been a resident of Palm Springs? So you know the turf out there, too, right?
Right. I moved to Palm Springs. I'm in Palm Desert now, but I moved to Palm Springs full-time in 1997. So I've been here a long time. I've had the opportunity to be in the tourism field, the reporting field, and just being able to work with all sorts of people across the board. And so this is like my sweet spot, just working with the community, trying to make things better, telling people stories, listening to people's stories. The experience is wonderful. I probably one of the best jobs in the city, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a fascinating job. Just give us an umbrella summary of what are the services the city provides to 1PS.
Okay, so as part of my Office of Neighborhoods Manager, we have a little bit of a budget for 1PS, so about $8,000 to provide for the annual meetings. Each neighborhood has to send out invitations to invite them to the annual meetings. We pay for postage and the mailings and things like that. I'm here for anything the board of directors needs. I set up monthly membership meetings, attend community meetings, plan and help coordinate the 1PS picnic and community expo, help new neighborhoods that are organizing. Basically, I do anything that needs to be done. The board of directors, 1PS, the representatives and alternates, they are just so great to work with. And I really do anything for them. And they pretty much do just about anything for me. So it's a great relationship.
It sounds that way. Bring in NUSA, N-U-S-A, NUSA, Neighborhoods USA. It's made up of neighborhood organizations nationwide and the city staffs that serve them. And what is NUSA and how does Palm Springs participate with it?
So NUSA, Neighborhoods USA, is a national nonprofit organization. It was created in 1975 to share information and experience to build and strengthen neighborhood organizations. Palm Springs, way before my time with the city coming in at 2016, they've been really active with NUSA. They frequently attended annual conferences where 1PS members and city staff have presented well-received workshops. They've been really, really involved. The former 1PS chair, now a city council member and former mayor for the city of Palm Springs, was on the board of NUSA when I first came to the city. And so she's really instrumental in getting us even more involved with the organization.
Palm Springs has won some pretty big awards from NUSA, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Individual neighborhoods in the city have won Best Neighborhood Program Awards, including for our Bladeside program, the annual Picnic and Community Expo, Tockwitz Creek Yacht Club, fun name, a group that keeps a section of the Tockwitz Creek wash area cleaned and maintained. Other awards include Best Electronic Newsletter, and more recently, Eric of 1PS received a first place award for his 1PS Guide to Palm Springs Neighborhoods, a beautiful glossy magazine that contains information about the history of the individual neighborhoods as well as 1PS. So we're very well represented at NUSA.
He sent me 3 copies of this thing. This magazine is really put together. And the great thing about it is that if you want to visit Palm Springs, it's a great guide to that because it breaks down the neighborhoods and the stars that live there and all that stuff. But if you're thinking about buying in Palm Springs, it's also great for that reason too.
Absolutely right. Yep.
Can a business or another service organization become a 1PS member?
No, 1PS represents the interests of our neighborhoods and by extension, their residents. There's no other group with that focus. The business community has several groups representing their interests like Chamber of Commerce, Desert Business Association, which is the LGBTQ Business Association, a group called Main Street, and others. But if businesses or organizations have an issue or a request or an announcement that relates to neighborhoods, we make time available to them at our meetings.
All right, here's something that's unique here. In nearly all cities that actively support neighborhood organizations, the organizations are arms of the city government, which funds and staffs them. That is not the case in Palm Springs. This is all organic, coming out of the neighborhoods, correct?
That's correct. That's how it started. It was really basically the neighborhoods, the residents had something to say to city government. There was not a direct conduit or really any formal way for them to reach out to the council members or the city staff. And this really opened that area of communication. And it is really special. I mean, they've created an office, my office. They've created a budget. They've created the opportunity for me to really do anything I can to help this organization. I don't know any other cities and out here in the desert, at least, that have city staff that are dedicated to that cause.
I think you'd find it hard put to find examples of it in cities around the country. Certainly not in big cities, but your city is what? Population of about 50,000, as I recall it?
Yep, a little shy of 50,000 at the 2020 census. And another thing I wanted to mention was the biggest award we received from NUSA, and for a smaller city like our size. Normally, the NUSA conferences, we've been to Omaha, Birmingham, El Paso, different cities like this. But in 2017, the city of Palm Springs was selected as the host city for the 2019 NUSA conference. And 1PS volunteers, and there were hundreds of them, formed the core of the organizing committee, and they committed countless hours creating tours and workshops and arranging for keynote speakers, including our Senator Barbara Boxer from California and Father Greg Boyle, who is the founder of Homeboy Industries. The work that went into it was intense for many, many months, and the conference attracted more than 600 attendees from 29 states and Washington, D.C., the Bahamas, Canada, and Japan. And the 4-day event featured 58 workshops and 17 tours, and that was all done by volunteer 1PS leadership. It was amazing to see that come together.
Well, you know what? Based on this summary, and believe me, this was a great umbrella summary of what's going on and how the city relates to 1PS and all that. But it seems to me that in NUSA, you're not just a member of NUSA, but you are a force within NUSA, correct?
Well, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, anyone that's been able to bring the convention to their own city, win that many awards, be as well respected as the city of Palm Springs, especially for our size. Yeah, absolutely. We're on the map in NUSA's
Sure
world,
sounds that way to me. Yeah. Well, Denise, this has been a great overview of what's going on out there, and now we're going to go to Kathy. I understand that you've served as chairperson and vice chair of the board of directors of 1PS over the past 7 years, something like that. Tell me more about the organization.
Well, it was initially formed as Denise suggested because this relationship between the city was not exactly a healthy one, I would say. And so when the organization came together, it was not incorporated, but in a sense, its origin, we have become a 501c4 nonprofit. And you probably are aware that that is oftentimes referred to as a public benefit. Meaning that the organization is formed and operates to benefit the public. So that occurred, I think, in 2016. So now we have some of the requirements of that status, which include bylaws and an organizational structure with a board of directors, and it has 5 officers and 7 at-large members. We also have standing committees that focus on particular issues such as our events and working with the code enforcement and public works department on issues that affect our residents. We also have a communications committee, and those help to bring in people who are not necessarily on the board, but they can serve on those committees and become more integral parts of the organization.
That 501 status also enables you to raise money, too, for things that maybe the city doesn't have to pay for or doesn't normally pay for, correct?
Right. Basically, that gives us a chance to, raise money and not have it taxable until a certain threshold. So our major source of income is the modernism that you're familiar with by working with Eric before. So that is our major way of getting our funding. But we need to branch out and get some additional ways of doing that, because it's very difficult, as you can imagine, to organize and find people who are willing to open their door to 300 or 400 people trooping, in one day through their homes. So we are looking at different ways of raising money and having events that are fun and will attract people to that. And there are 52 organizations, neighborhood organizations, as Denise said. But they are all different types of organizations, and some of them are wealthy themselves, and some of them also struggle with fundraising. So we want to try to help them become more robust as well.
Well, when I hear a story like this, the one thing that keeps popping back into my mind is that you get all this done by getting people together in an era where it's difficult to have two people agree on any one thing anymore. It's awesome what you're doing. It really is awesome what you're doing and how you get people together. So let's continue here. Who else attends besides neighborhood representatives? There must be city officials too when you meet, right?
Of course. And I think this is one of the most amazing things, because typically and historically, the city manager has attended every single meeting. We meet once a month, except in August. The city's dark in August, and we are too. And the city manager stays through the entire meeting, not just when his name appears on the agenda. There's a designated liaison from the police department and from the fire department, and those two representatives attend each time. We also have the sustainability director who comes, and that's a very important part of our city's focus now on becoming more green. Having that relationship with the city of being able to know how to process your waste, that sort of thing, is becoming more and more of an issue. We also have a CERT, emergency preparedness officer, and he attends the meetings. Disposal people come, and the water department people come. All of those things are connected to the livability of the city and beginning to become much more interested and concerned about preserving, our environment.
Yeah, the level of organization here is just absolutely amazing to me. Does this happen in your town, Kev? No, it doesn't happen in my town either.
Not at all.
We're not that big a town, but it seems like it would even be easier to do it in like where you live or where I live,
Well, both of them gave points that they actually communicate between the code enforcement checking on permits. My question is for both of you, would you come to Bucks County and do that? Just throwing that out there.
You guys want to come to Pennsylvania and work your magic? No response on that one.
They're not coming.
No, they're not coming. Okay. What types of activities and events does 1PS engage? I know about, and it's wonderful, Modernism Week and then Mini Mod Week that happens in October, and I'll be there for that, as a matter of fact.
Wonderful.
But, yeah, looking forward to it. So what are some of the other types of activities that 1PS engages in?
Well, I would say that one of the most important events in bringing the whole city together, not just the members of the neighborhood organizations, but it is our annual picnic. And it is co-sponsored with the city, and it's in one of our lovely parks. And we usually have close to 1,000 people attending that. And anyone who comes, whether they're in a designated neighborhood or not, gets a free lunch, and we have all kinds of interesting things like hot air balloon rides for the people who come. We have dog dress up contest that's pretty funny. But
yeah, I'm sure that's wild.
Yes, it is. So in addition to the picnic, there are performances by youth groups sometimes. And so we have a big stage set up and that sort of thing. Of course, all of the officials come from the city, and we have booths set up, various organizations that are other nonprofits, and also the neighborhoods attend that and oftentimes are promoting their own services that our neighbors appreciate. In addition to the picnic, we have an annual Festival of Lights parade. Some of the neighborhoods have an entry and march in that parade. And it's along with all the city officials and a lot of other organizations with marching bands and all sorts of fun things that are in that, especially the giant helium balloons that we wrangle to entertain all the attendants at the event.
In what ways does your organization, 1PS, provide the city council or the city staff with input on issues of concern?
Oftentimes the issues are, bubble up, from an individual neighborhood, but we also have issues, of course, that would affect the entire city. So what we can do in a number of ways is to work through some of those issues with our existing standing committees, but we also have the provisions in our bylaws to bring forward issues to the city council or to city staff. If we're going to take a position on something and want to share that position, then we can put it forth in writing. But when we do a recommendation, we typically would do it in writing, and sometimes it comes directly from the board if we don't have time to go to the full membership because of the currency of the issue, then we can present it that way, just as taking our position on it. But if we want to make a recommendation, it does require a vote of our entire membership. So that's how we can oftentimes address the concerns of the residents.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. That was a pretty good explanation of, the nuts and bolts of what happens with through 1PS. Megan, as vice president of the oldest neighborhood in Palm Springs, can you tell us which neighborhood that is and what that means to you?
Yes. Hi. Thank you for having me on. And I am the vice president of the Desert Highland Gateway Estates Community Action Association, again, founded in 1967.
I want to ask about your age, Megan, but you sound young. It's wonderful hearing about a younger generation taking up some very important roles in the city and community like Palm Springs and creating long-lasting impact.
Yes, sure. So my neighborhood, Desert Highland Gateway Estates, has a strong historical presence and is known for its various contributions to the city's development. Every year, the Black History Committee actually puts on a city tour that demonstrates these contributions. This year, I was lucky enough to participate in that tour. It's provided during Black History Month, so that was a lot of fun. My neighborhood also represents a diverse population of Black and Brown families, which is pretty neat because I'm Latina myself, and the neighborhood is made up of single-family homes and townhomes specifically. However, I think the most interesting part of this is that my neighborhood is one of 3 that still cater to families and children. And this really creates a special needs that most other neighborhoods don't face, at least not in the same degree.
Okay. Let's look at the bigger picture. Can you tell me more about the varied compositions of the 52 neighborhood organizations that make up 1PS?
Sure. Some of our 1PS neighborhoods, like Little Tuscany, sit beautifully on the hillside overlooking the San Jacinto Mountains and are known for their serene desert landscapes. Not to mention some cool celebrities like Elvis Presley once lived in that neighborhood, which features both historic and modern homes. The Tennis Club neighborhood is made up of single-family residents and boutique hotels for the most part, centrally situated in downtown Palm Springs, and contributes greatly to its local economy. In fact, I grew up at the Tennis Club. I learned to swim there and played tennis with my dad every summer there. Vista Las Palmas is a neighborhood known for its mid-century homes and social life. It's recognized every year in a big way during Modernism Week, essentially a week-long touring party celebrating the community's history and contributions to the modernist lifestyle. It's very popular, not to mention the amount of money raised and donated to various organizations. Finally, we have other neighborhoods such as Parkview Mobile Estates, which is a 55-plus community nestled against the mountains and near the Tahquitz Creek waterfall, which is actually one of my favorite gems in all of Palm Springs. It's just a beautiful waterfall, really quick to get to, and just fun to do with friends and family.
That sounds like a really diverse composition of neighborhood organizations that make up 1PS. And do all of them raise money for their own neighborhoods?
Well, Ron, some of the neighborhood organizations are incorporated and others are not. Some are 501c4s or 501c3 nonprofits. And, there's still some neighborhoods that are developing that status, like Desert Highland Gateway Estates. We're just waiting until we make our organization official in that respect before we raise any funds for our future projects.
Interesting, and something very much that neighborhood organizations across the country should think about. Is there anything else you would like to share about your role of being one of the youngest members on the board of 1PS?
I want to mention that what drew me to this organization is the inclusivity of its members and the desire for the organization to become better from the inside out. You can see that in the causes that we stand for and the assistance we provide to various initiatives such as youth camps, neighborhood beautification projects, and community leadership developments. No organization is perfect, but if we continue to include the voices of others, and we do have a lot more work to do, but the great thing is that we're willing and we're able to adjust and remain agile. We will at least become almost perfect.
Yeah, that's well said, well said. So, Eric, you're up. Eric, the last time we spoke, you told us of some of the activities your Twin Palms neighborhood was engaged in specifically for Modernism Week. Are there other types of programs your neighborhood has developed?
Like so many neighborhoods in Palm Springs, most of our finances come from the proceeds of Modernism Week tours that we lead here. And like most of those neighborhoods, we return a lot of the proceeds to the city and to other service organizations. So some of the things that Twin Palms has funded are things like we have a fire station in our neighborhood, and we asked the men and women stationed there if there was anything that we could purchase for them that the city isn't likely to. One was a sound system for their lounge. One was free weights for their fitness center. And the big one was a $1,500 chef's grills to complement their indoor kitchen. Now they have a full outdoor kitchen as well. We have also funded a portion of an early literacy program created by our public library. We've given money to the local animal shelter. Several years ago, when the entire region was in the grips of a rather severe drought, the city identified the water usage for above ground irrigation as one of its chief water wasters. And the city developed a program by which individuals or organizations could adopt trees, and the adoption fee would pay to underground the irrigation for those trees. And so Twin Palms adopted 2 city trees, which paid for their underground irrigation. One of the saddest episodes in the city's history happened about 7 years ago when 2 of our police officers were ambushed and killed. And the Police Officers Association created a fund for the families of those officers, and Twin Palms gave generously to the funds set up for each of those families. But as I mentioned, Twin Palms is not alone in doing this. Vista Las Palmas, a neighborhood that Megan mentioned a moment ago, they have funded the K9 program for the police department. They've purchased defibrillators for our fire department. We have a place called the Neurovitality Center, which is a treatment center for stroke patients, which Vista Las Palmas has supported. We have an air museum, which is essentially an aviation museum, which they support, and several other programs over the years. That neighborhood, too, has donated tens of thousands of dollars over the years. One of the more interesting donations was from a neighborhood called Racket Club Estates. Several years ago now, they funded the travel expenses for the Palm Springs High School marching band so that they could march in the presidential inauguration parade. And that was so important for the kids and so important for the visibility of Palm Springs. And it was really a unique way to give back to the city. Just several days ago, our Indian Canyons neighborhood had an article written, or actually it was a thank you note published in the paper by the Foundation for the Palm Springs Unified School District for that neighborhood support. And I think it was Denise that mentioned the Tuckwitz River Yacht Club. And there is no river, and there certainly are no yachts here, but it's made up of about 4 neighborhoods that for almost 20 years now, they have been cleaning up debris from a wash, from all of the water that runs down the side of the hills and collects debris in the wash. And these neighborhoods work with other service organizations to help keep it clean. And again, the key thing here is that every one of these items that I mentioned, they're all incremental to the city budget. They're all independent of the city, and they're all funded exclusively either by 1PS or by the neighborhoods individually.
Yeah, that I think is a really amazing part. Tell me, 1PS, the magazine, which you created, you're the kingpin there. It projects a super image of Palm Springs. Can our listeners view it online?
Yeah, the print edition is sold out, but it is available for both viewing and downloading online, so anybody can take a cruise through that. As a model for other cities that may be considering something like this, when the idea was first floated in the early 2000s about the city developing a way to formally recognize duly created neighborhood organizations, the city council was split on that. There was a faction that felt that they would be creating their own shadow government and that it would be the bane of their existence. And so the subcommittee that helped create the proposal was actually made up of one advocate for this initiative and one person who was skeptical of it. Obviously, it passed, and the bottom line here is 12 years after it passed, 60%, the majority of our city council, were made up of people that were at one time their neighborhood representatives to 1PS. So far from being a shadow government, what they created was a farm team for city council. I mentioned before about the police officers that were killed several years ago. I think nothing speaks more loudly to the stature and the regard with which the neighborhoods and 1PS is held, but for the fact that our police chief at the time, who was so loved and so respected, he was the most shaken individual in the entire city by this turn of events. And one of his reactions was to call a meeting with 1PS and the neighborhoods and to talk through what we as organizations could do to help get the city through this period of mourning. And so the person that we turned to for our safety and security in his time of need, he turned to 1PS and he turned to the neighborhood. And I don't think anything speaks louder than that as to stature we're held. Thank you again for having me
Stand
on.
together in good times and bad. Okay. Eric, Megan, Kathy, Denise, thank you very, very much. This has been very, very informative. I'll see you in Palm Springs in October.
Well, I know I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for
Thank you.
everything.
All right.
That's this week's podcast. Your Valuable Home comes to you every week on the new Pod City Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, and all other popular podcast directories.
And don't forget to tell your friends and family about Your Valuable Home, the weekly podcast that's all about building wealth in residential real estate.